You are looking at the Champagne province of France, located about 90 miles northeast of Paris, where the soft climate of the Atlantic Ocean meets the stern climate of the continent. This is Champagne country and covers about 60,000 acres of land ideally suited to the growing of grapes for champagne. Next to Paris, undoubtedly the best-known French word throughout the world is champagne. It brings to mind festivity, good living, and joy. But the growing of the grapes and the production of the finished product requires considerable knowledge, skill, timing, and dedication. We've come to Reims, France, to see how they do it. And with us is the assistant to the president of G.H. Mumm and Company, Connie Konold. Hi, Connie.
Hi, John.
How long have they been raising grapes in this area?
For over 2,000 years, going back to Roman times.
Oh, that is a long time. Now, I know that the climate is ideal for grape growing, but the soil is pretty unusual, too, isn't it?
It is. There's a special quality to the soil, the chalk content.
And how deep is the chalk? Is it like topsoil, just a few inches?
Oh, no, it goes down very deep, and the roots go down 48 feet.
48 feet?
Yes.
Now, those are deep roots. Now, the grapes that we're going to talk about today, are they all one type of grape, or is champagne made from a number of different types?
Champagne is always made from 3 types of grapes, the white Chardonnay and 2 black grapes, the Pinot Noir and the Pinot Meunier.
Connie, do you have an expert on the operation of the vineyards for us to meet?
I have just the man for you, the mayor of Bouzy.
Bouzy? There's a town called Bouzy here in France?
Bouzy and Dizzy in Champagne.
And the mayor is an authority on the operation of in the vineyards.
Georges Vesselle is a 3rd-generation champagne grower, and he's also the director of all G.H. Mumm and Company's vineyards.
Sounds like our man. Great. The countryside in the Champagne district is dotted with small towns and villages. They are nestled in beautiful valleys and are surrounded on all sides by vineyards, forming endless geometric patterns on the sloping hillsides. The town of Bouzy is located in a region of Champagne which is famous for its red grapes, and Mayor Georges Vesselle is the man responsible for the quality of them.
Bonjour, Monsieur Vesselle. John,
Bonjour,
I'd like you to meet the mayor of Bouzy,
How do you do,
Georges
sir?
Vesselle, John Stearns.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we may have a tiny bit of a language problem here. Will you be the interpreter for us?
I'd be delighted.
All right. Well, let's start right at the beginning. Where they have cuttings and then they're grafted together. Is that right?
Les vignes commencent des porte-greffes et des greffons.
Il y a des vignes, des porte-greffes et des greffons, et nous greffons sur le porte-greffe.
Yeah.
Yes, they all started from graft.
Right. And of course, there's the roots and the top part. Where do these 2 different parts come from, the cutting on top and the rootstock?
The rootstock comes from the south of France, and the top cutting comes from Champagne.
Very good. Now, how long is it from the time a vine is planted until it bears the first fruit?
Il faut compter combien de temps avant que la plante donne du fruit?
Il y a la plante, les raisins ont droit à l'appellation champagne à partir de la 3e feuille.
Monsieur Vesselle told us that a vine must be 3 years old before its grapes could be used in making champagne. The growing process begins in January when the vines are examined and prepared for the new season. In April, leaves begin to appear and the whole province is transformed. As with any agricultural crop, weather, pests, and disease have a great effect on its overall quality. Frost can destroy the delicate buds, but the French have ingeniously foiled Mother Nature. A mist envelops the vineyard, forming ice cocoons around the fragile fruit, which the freezing cold cannot penetrate. When pests appear, quick action must take place, and aerial spraying can cover thousands of acres in a day. It's important that the sun shine equally on all the buds, so towards the end of May, pruning takes place. After months of meticulous care and a constant vigil, flowers appear. This signals the final growing stage is at hand. We asked Monsieur Vesselle how long after flowering does the harvest begin.
En moyenne, compter 100 jours.
In general, 100 days.
100 days. Now, I saw a rather interesting piece of equipment out in the vineyard, and it was up high, it went between the two rows, and it looked like they were trimming off some of the leaves. Could he tell us about that?
Monsieur Vesselle, dans le vignoble, on a vu une machine qui avait l'air d'un aspirateur, qui faisait beaucoup de bruit.
Oui, rapidement, c'est une effeuilleuse. C'est une machine qui retire les feuilles.
This trimmer uses air pressure to strip away the leaves, exposing the grapes as the final step before harvest. In mid-September, every year the pickers return to this region for the harvest. Expert hands select only the finest grapes. In this vineyard, they are harvesting white Pinot Chardonnay grapes, which make up 1/3 of the Champagne harvest. In the Champagne region, they grade each of their vineyards for the quality of its grapes. Only those rating 70% and above are allowed to provide grapes for the making of the wine. Now, this vineyard, for example, is rated 100%, making its grapes among the most expensive in the entire world. The crop is loaded onto specially designed tractor-trailer rigs, which will transport it to nearby villages as the next step in its journey, which still has many years to go. Monsieur Vesselle told us about this year's crop.
C'est ça qui pèse 600 grammes, qui est vraiment exceptionnel.
Oh.
This year is going to be a truly exceptional year in quality and in quantity. And this bunch of grapes is a record breaker. It weighs 600 grams, and a normal bunch of grapes weighs 100.
My heavens.
C'est la plus grosse grappe que j'ai jamais vue de ma vie.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
It's the largest bunch of grapes that Mr. Vesselle has seen in his life.
C'est un Pinot Noir.
Marvelous.
It's a Pinot Noir.
Will you thank the mayor for us?
Monsieur Vesselle, merci beaucoup. C'était très gentil de nous recevoir.
Mais j'ai été très heureux de vous recevoir ici et j'espère que je suis sûr que vous serez un ambassadeur de la Champagne et du Bouzy.
Mr. Vesselle would like to make you an honorary citizen of Bouzy.
Ah, thank you so much. Thank you.
And thank you, too, Connie Konold, for being such a delightful interpreter. After a brief time out, we'll visit Champagne cellars that have been in continuous operation for over 150 years. We are now at the main production plant of G.H. Mumm and Company, where the champagne is born. Although modern equipment is employed, the basic technique is unchanged in 150 years. And the gentleman with me now was born and raised in this very area and trained in the cellars just such as this one, out of the city of Reims. He is the director of Mumm, Michel Budin. Gee whiz, it is cold and dark and deep under here. How old are these cellars?
Well, I would assume they were built around the time of the foundation of the firm, let's say around 1827.
And it just seems to be miles and miles in every direction. How large is it?
Yes, well, I cannot give you the count by yards, but I must say that they are at least 13 miles long.
13 miles?
Indeed.
And is this the chalk that it's dug out of?
That's right, yes, you see it here.
Uh-huh. Oh, yes, I do indeed. Why was chalk a good thing to use?
Well, I would say first, it was the local subsoil.
Yes.
And in the old days, the only main method of aging wine in good condition, that is at constant temperature, meant having it in cellars.
I see.
And this chalk provided most useful as it was easy to cut out, at the same time provided the necessary dampness for a good aging of the wine in the cellar.
Are you and I aging well down here, do you think?
Well, I hope so. I don't feel too bad.
Yeah. Well, now, of course, the grapes are not brought directly here from the vineyard. They go to the press, do they?
Before coming here, they've got to go to the press house for it to be cropped
Right.
and turned into grape juice or must.
Well, now, the presses, they're awfully large, but they don't seem to be very deep. Why is that?
Well, for two very simple reasons. The first one is that we want the grape juice, or the must, to flow through the stems and the raisins very quickly. And second, we don't want the skins of the grapes to tint the grape juice.
Monsieur Budin told us an interesting thing. Regardless of the bounty of the crop, only the first 700 gallons of juice per pressing is allowed to be made into champagne. The remaining juice is used in making other wines. After pressing, the juice is transported to the Mumm's facility. Here it is pumped into temperature-controlled tanks where the first fermentation takes place. 6 months later, a clear wine results. Next, one of the most critical steps takes place. These wines have come from many different vineyards all over the Champagne district, and each has its own unique characteristics. A group of experts who can determine even the slightest differences sample each wine, and they judge not only taste, but sight and smell. They determine the exact proportions in order to keep a consistent quality from year to year. And then the bottles are filled. When is the sparkle born?
Well, the sparkle is born shortly after the bottle has been filled with champagne. Because, as we mentioned before, the second fermentation occurs then, and the second fermentation produces at the same time alcohol and carbon dioxide. And as the bottle is sealed, the carbon dioxide cannot escape and therefore dissolves itself in the wine and creates the bubbles and the pressure.
Well, now I know that aging is very important. Tell me about that.
Yes, it's indeed the most important thing about making a good champagne, and the aging starts from the time the wine has been bottled. The first stage of this aging, which incidentally will last an average of 3 years, is in bottles stored on the side during the second fermentation, and let's say for a year and a half after that.
A challenge of this aging process is sediment that forms inside the bottle. So the bottles are placed on racks, and over a period of 2 or 3 months, the sediment is worked down into the neck of the bottle. One man can riddle, as they call it, up to 30,000 bottles a day. And when all of the sediment is finally deposited in the neck, it has to be removed. Utilizing the pressure that is built up, the deposit is shot out. Some special blends are still disgorged by hand, but today there's a new method that involves freezing the neck of the bottle. It is then opened, and the plug shoots out. Releasing all of this pressure prompted a question. Now, here is a typical bottle that they've just degorged to get the sediment out. But the thing I'm wondering about is when it's open like that, doesn't it lose all its effervescence?
No, because most of the carbonic gas or carbon dioxide is dissolved in the wine, and there's still a lot of pressure.
Well, I don't see any pressure there.
Well, I'm sure you know.
Oh, all right.
That's very easy. Look here.
Hey, Happy New Year! I should say there is a lot. All right. Monsieur Budin went on to tell us that after disgorging, the small amount of wine that was lost is replaced by a champagne liqueur. The level of its sweetness determining what type of champagne will ultimately result. Finally, it is corked, and a protective bridle is added. One last mixing, and the champagne is allowed to rest for a few months to complete its evolution. And when the cellar master determines that it is ready, the years of care and expertise results in one of the world's finest champagnes. We asked about labeling.
The labeling here is a bit complicated because you've got to ensure that all these various labels are in line.
Are they different for different countries, the labels?
Yes, more and more so, because every country now has got its own regulations.
I see. Well, what country is this particular label for?
This one is for France.
Oh, very good. Maybe we'll open it before we leave.
That's right.
All right, well, fine. Well, thank you so much. And I know we have so much more to see here. Can we go down this way?
Yes, indeed.
One thing. Storing, uncorking, serving are just a few of the things on tap after a brief time out, and here it is. an appointment to meet a gentleman who was born and raised in Switzerland, speaks 4 languages, and travels extensively throughout the world, visiting champagne markets. He is the Vice President and Managing Director of Mumm Champagne, Marzio G. Snozzi.
Voila.
Oh,
what a
magnificent mansion. Absolutely magnificent. How old is it?
It was built at the end of the 19th century by one of the former proprietors of the House of Mumm.
Is that right?
Please be seated.
Thank you. Well, the first question I have for you, sir, is champagne a blend?
Champagne is a blend indeed, and a blend which may change every year according to the specific aspects of the grape.
I see. Well, now, we've seen everything from harvest to wiring the cork, but how about the care and the use of the final product?
Well, you know, champagne is a very fine wine, a delicate one, and therefore it should be treated the way you treat your sweetheart, with great care.
Very good. Well, now, how about, should the bottle be stored when you get it home? How should it be stored?
I would suggest that when you take a bottle home, you store it in a room where the temperature is constant, and in the dark, if possible, and the bottle laying down so that the cork remains wet.
Oh, the cork
for instance, yes, you know, using a rack, for instance, like this one.
I see. Oh, that would, yes. Excellent.
You know.
And how should it be cooled, and how cold should you get it?
Well, the temperature of our cellars is around 50 Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
And I would suggest that the bottle should not be colder than 46, 48.
Right. Well, now, when you serve it, should it be served in a bucket of ice, or what would you suggest?
We usually serve it in a bucket of ice, and I will show you one bucket and a bottle.
All right, fine. Oh, there we go.
Merci.
Merci. Now, I've seen waiters, in order to get it cold, to rub it back and forth like this. Now, is that the way to do it?
Well, in my opinion, it's a gimmick.
Oh.
It's a gimmick. It irritates the wine, but I don't see the point really in doing that.
In other words, they're just impressing the customer.
Perhaps, I don't know.
Well, now, there must be a technique to taking the cork off, because when I do it, either somebody gets hit in the eye or it hits the ceiling or something or other. Can you show me the correct way to take the cork off?
Yes, I can even call in a specialist.
A specialist?
And I will show you how to open a bottle of
my.
champagne.
All right.
Sommelier, s'il vous plaît.
Oh, my. So first the wire.
Yes. The point is, you know, the bottle should not point at you.
Yes, I see, in the direction that he has it now. And then very carefully. Oh, beautifully
Voila.
done. Absolutely
Voila.
beautifully done. But now, I may not have a specialist at home the next time I serve this, so can you show me how I can open it?
Well, I will show you how I can open a bottle, and perhaps you can do the same. I'm sure you can.
I will take a lesson from you. Fine.
Merci. See? Don't do this, you know.
Right.
You know, that's, no.
Right.
First, the wire, as you have seen before.
Yes, undo the wire.
You know.
Right. But the thing what I don't understand is why it doesn't foam all over. The way you do it is so...
You see, I twist the bottle.
Oh, you twist the whole
I
bottle.
hold the cork.
Okay. Very good. And a little pop. Now, why doesn't it foam all over?
Because as you have seen, I keep the bottle this way.
Yes.
And the champagne, of course, we have put this bottle into the fridge 2 hours ago.
Oh, that's
you know,
it's because it's cold.
Yes,
It helps a
yes,
great deal.
yes,
You
yes.
know, I've seen some people save cork. Now, is cork, is it important once the bottle is open?
Well, the cork is important because on the cork you can read the word champagne,
Yes.
which means it is real champagne.
Right.
And if it's a vintage bottle, you can read the vintage on the cork.
Oh, I see. That isn't put on until just before it's bottled, in other words.
That's right.
I see.
That's right.
Well, now, should the bottle be wrapped in a napkin?
I would not suggest that. I heard that they used to do that during the Depression in countries like Switzerland and Germany, because some people wanted to drink champagne in those hard times. And they didn't want other people to see that they were drinking champagne, so they used to.
They're used to hide it, right?
Yes, used to hide it.
Well, now, if you open a bottle and you only use part of it, can you store the rest of it and use it sometime later?
Yes, I mean, if it's not, if you don't keep it for hours. But I would suggest that once you open a bottle, you go all the way. You know.
Very good. Or it might be a little dead if you keep it too long, right? Is there a proper glass to use to serve champagne?
I will show you a selection of champagne glasses, which we have here.
Fine. I'd like to
and
see that.
you may pick the one which you like better.
Oh, my, there's such a...
Voila.
Yeah. Well, now, the one that a lot of people use and think is the typical or official champagne glass is this one. Now, what do you think of that?
No, I would not suggest that, because this glass here, you see, is wide open.
Yes.
And therefore, the perfume of the champagne, what we call in French le bouquet, is lost.
Right. So this is not a good glass.
No.
This would be good for goldfish or something.
Perhaps, yes, perhaps.
All right. Well, now let's talk about, for example, this one.
This one is much better. This is the one I use personally for tasting when we make the blend.
Oh, can you show me a taste test, how you do it?
Yes, I can show you that.
All right.
And of course, when we taste what we call still wine.
Yes, it's before the bubbles, right?
Yes,
of course.
But I will show you, I mean, how I do it when I taste the wine. You see? First of all, you look at the wine and see if the wine is clear.
All right.
It's very important.
Yes. You don't want any sediment or anything.
No, and you know, if the wine is not quite clear, it means that something may be wrong with the wine. Then you do this.
Why do you do that?
You do that because you want to develop the bouquet, which is the perfume of the wine. Yeah? And then you do this. You smell the wine.
Smell the aroma.
You know?
And that's important.
Very important, because the nose suggests what usually the palate confirms.
Well, what is your judgment on that?
It's young, it's fresh, it's elegant, and very good.
We got a good one here.
Very good.
All right, fine. Well, now let's talk about, this seems to be a little lower than that one.
Yes, it's a little lower than this one, but it's more or less the same glass.
I see.
More or less the same glass.
But this is quite different. This is very elegant.
This is a very sophisticated champagne glass, which we call flute, the champagne flute, which we use whenever we serve our deluxe cuvée, which is our premium champagne.
Oh, the top of the line.
The top of the line, René Laloux. You know, the bottle over there on the rack.
And you have a special glass.
Then we have a special glass.
All right. And then how about this one?
This is my favorite glass because it's an elegant glass. Crystal,
right.
fine glass. And you see, the shape of this glass is such that it keeps the perfume. That is the bouquet of the wine, which is very important.
All right. Now, you should never use a swizzle stick, should you?
No, I would not suggest that, because we do care about the bubbles. Bubbles make a champagne help turning the champagne into a very light wine.
Right.
If you take away the bubbles, it turns into a white wine which is heavy.
Very good. What is rosé?
Rosé, if I were a poet, I would say it's a message of love between God and the woman. But in fact, the rosé is a champagne for ladies, or a ladies' champagne, I should say.
Right.
And it is made with classical champagne, for instance, this Cordon Rouge, to which we would add a small proportion of still wine coming from the Champagne area. Generally, we use a Bouzy, you know, the village. You have been to Bouzy?
Yes, the
Bouzy Rouge.
Right. And that gives it that beautiful pink.
Exactly.
Very good. And what is Brut?
Brut means very, very dry champagne. It's the driest champagne of the line.
Is it drier than very dry?
It is drier than very dry, and above all, drier than extra dry.
It's drier than extra dry.
Yes, because in the United States, for instance, people love buying a bottle of extra dry.
Yes.
They love to see the expression or the word extra dry on the bottle, but they don't want the champagne to be too dry. It's amazing, but it's like that.
And how about demi-sec?
Demi-sec is even sweeter than extra dry. And demi-sec was the wine which was sold especially in cold countries, you know, before the First World War in Russia, for instance.
Now, one final question. Can you define for me exactly what is vintage?
Vintage is a champagne which is made exclusively, I emphasize, exclusively with grapes coming from a particular year. For instance, 1982 is going to be a vintage year. At least I hope so.
I see.
And we will be using for the 1982 cuvée exclusively wines coming from the grapes which we are gathering now in the vineyards.
Well, my wish for you is that every year be a vintage year.
That's very nice of you, and I'll drink to that.
Merci beaucoup, mille fois. Well, as Voltaire once said, this wine where foaming bubbles dance reflects the brilliant soul of France. Thanks to the authorities that we've met today, we're far more aware of how champagne is produced, how rigorous are the controls over its production, and how quality conscious are the makers. It's another fascinating example of agribusiness, the people in it, and the important part it plays in producing food and fiber. Until next week, so long from Ag USA in Reims, France.